Hey everyone, welcome to DynamicsCon. Woo! This is the session I've been waiting to do the whole year. We've got some crazy people on the call with us. But firstly, before we do any intros, just a huge shout out to all of you. Thank you so very much for voting us in. We were really, really psyched about this and we were really hoping. So yeah, huge appreciations. So well done, folks. Excellent. Right, so what are you here for? What is this crazy session all about? Well, let's have a look. We're going to be talking about data sources. I wish it was sources. I could do with some food, as always. But yeah, we're going to be chatting around data source, right? Absolutely awesome. And we decided we'd do something a little different because everyone does comparisons between how awesome Dataverse is and SQL and SharePoint. And obviously, there's some other secret things that we chat around. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and take this to another level, so to speak, hey, folks. So first things first, before I introduce myself, I would like to bring my team up, or the team that's decided to come and do this with me, and decided to be the most abusive, troublesome people in my life, up to date. Mats, can we start with you, you beautiful man?
Thanks a lot. Hi, I'm Mats Necker. I'm from Germany. I work for the K&K group here. I'm representing the Dataverse, which I think is the best data source there is. I also think it's the most dynamic and maybe most let's say the new kid on the block. Probably that's why I got that data source. If I look at my colleagues here, so I'm pretty excited about this. As Chris said, I think there are a lot of things there. I came prepared. I hope Marty and Claire you did as well. And with that, Claire, I give to you.
Okay, so Claire Edgson, the global lead solution architect for Avanade. I'm here supporting SQL as the oldest database, if we're going down the age route, because being the oldest in the team, the real proper database in the family. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Martin.
Thank you. My name is Martin Kleinans. I'm a product specialist at Avanade. And it goes without saying, SharePoint is the most dynamic and versatile platform there really is. I mean, apart from all these text-based environments.
Chris? Right. Well, thanks, Marty Potty. So I call him Marty Potty because he thinks SharePoint's a party, but yeah. Anyway, so my name's Chris Huntingford. I'm the Global Power Apps Lead here at Avanade. Poor old Mats is the only non-Avanadian on the call, but we love him, so we let him in for a change.
The imposter.
Yeah. Right, so let's get tucked in. So why exactly are we here? And I'll tell you a bit of a story. Many, many moons ago, right? Got to do it in movie voice. There was one data source. No, I'm kidding. There were lots of data sources, right? And I'm talking around like 2008 to around 2011, when Microsoft, they released this thing called Dynamics. A little bit before then, obviously, but that's when Dynamics became known as something useful with a real database underneath it, SQL. And then they had this other thing called SharePoint. Don't know what it did. Apparently, it stored some documents here and there. Anyway, people used to debate where they were going to put data. It was crazy. And then you had the SQLers, all the really awesome devs saying, hey, let's put data in here. And Dynamics people were like, no, that's really hard to use. Let's put data in XRM, right? And then the SharePointers, none the wiser because they didn't really know what a relational database is. Let's put data in SharePoint. Actually, it was a battle. I remember battling with Martin, actually, when we were working at our previous company many moons ago, fighting about where to put data. I'm sure you guys remember this, right? Like at some point, somebody sent something rude to you about, this data source is junk. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I did myself a lot.
Plenty.
That's it. Well, I will tell you, that is why we are here, is we're going to take a look at why those arguments took place and also roast each other a little bit, right? Now, a couple of things is when you look at how Microsoft is broken up and a lot of organizations are broken up, they spoke about this thing called the three clouds. I'm going to stare blankly now because I have no idea why you would want three clouds. Amazon has one cloud. Google has one cloud. Why do we have to have three? Surely that means we have to integrate everything and make it really difficult for people. So we have one cloud at Microsoft. It's called the Microsoft Cloud. But there are three kind of service areas, okay? You get Azure, Microsoft 365, and business application. It just so happens on this call right now, we've got people from each one of those service areas. And it just so happens that each one of these people is highly opinionated, full of nonsense, and very happy to tell each other that their data storage facility is way better, right? And in swooped the Power Platform, and with its blazing wings and its amazing fiery tail, decided to unite these three areas together, right? And that was really epic. So everyone was like, cool, we've got this like one thing that we can use to build solutions. But like my solution is better than yours because I build it on SharePoint, and my solution is better than SharePoint because I build it on Dataverse. And let's just face it, everyone's too scared of SQL. So anyway, that's besides the point, right? So this came in, and everyone started leveraging Power Platform. They were building apps and they were building automations, and everyone questioned where it came from. And it actually, Microsoft are great at building new things, and they are better at using existing things. And when you look at the Power Platform stack, like Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent, no, PowerPoint is not quite there. And I don't think there will be such a thing as Power Word. They decided to reuse this stuff, like Power BI is Yellow Excel. And Power Apps effectively came from SharePoint. And Dynamics 365 customer engagement is a Power App. Whoa, crazy, right? Power Automate is basically, I don't know, prettier logic apps, right? And then you get Power Virtual Agent. Basically, nobody liked the bot framework. They were a bit scared of it, so they put it in something a lot prettier, and there it is, right? And then your data layer, which is what we're going to argue about today, right? But all of this stuff has existed for a long time. Now, what's cool is that because it's existed for a long time, you've likely been using it for ages. And because of all of this stuff, we had to make choices about the way we built things. So I know I've spoken to each one of these folks on the call, right? And Claire and I have had many a debates about where to build an app. And Mats and I have had many a discussion of where to put data. It's always Dataverse, just by the way. And Martin thinks that SharePoint's a database, but it's not. So basically, we've always had to make a choice about where to put data based on certain rules and criteria. Now, folks, really quickly, just a hands up or make a noise or say something. Have you ever been in one of these debates in your business?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You mean us? Yes. Plenty. You mean us?
I want to see some people in the chat. If you've in the chat been in that position, let us know.
Tell us, please. Tell us which is the better data storage facility.
Shout about it in the chat. Go mad.
We're not going to talk about data service, Open Flexi Service Versatile Teams, or whatever it was called this week. But we're going to focus on a couple of the other three. So stick it in the chat. We want to see. Feel free to hurl abuse mainly at Martin. It's totally fine. Yeah. So when we start looking and breaking down all these data storage facilities, it's kind of like, well, where do we build our stuff, right? And a lot of people think that Dataverse is only for mission critical use cases, and SQL is only for organization-wide initiatives. And then simple apps only should live on Dataverse for Teams or SharePoint. And Excel is not a database. I'm sorry, folks. I just can't say anything more. I mean, yeah. No. Right. That's why it didn't even make the slide. Okay. So anyway,
I was wondering where it was.
Yeah, bro. I got lost. It's going to be where it's where SharePoint's going to be in a little while. So think about it like this, right? We always have to decide where to put our solutions or build our solutions, and often it comes down to things like cost. Putting it in SharePoint is a really good idea, and it's going to be cheap. But what happens when 50,000 people are using that and adding data? Putting it in Dataverse is amazing, right? But that's kind of like buying a Ferrari and driving it 1 meter down the road when you're building a tiny little app. So you've got to think about these types of things, okay? And that's where this data structure comes in. And Microsoft actually categorically say data is at the heart of everything, okay? Have you ever seen an app without data? Build a PowerPoint. Amazing. Have you ever seen a Power BI report without data? Yeah, it's pretty lame, right? So data is at the heart of everything. And one of the things that we do all the time is we continuously say, because I'm a modern workplace person, I'm going to build my stuff in SharePoint. Because I'm a Dynamics person, I'm going to build my stuff in Dataverse. And because I'm a Azure person, I'm going to build my stuff in Cosmos or SQL or whatever you'd like, okay? And a lot of us don't bother to explore outside of that because it's the way we've been doing things. I mean, I can tell you right now, I used to hate SharePoint. Okay, I still kind of don't like SharePoint. No, okay. I actually do. I love SharePoint. I love it reminding me a little bit of SharePoint, right? But like, it's very important to know the fact that we architect things based on the tech we understand and are comfortable with. And actually, you have to start looking outside of that. And that's what we're hoping we're going to show you here. So to introduce our roast battle rules, there are some rules, none of them which will be obeyed, because like I said, this is the most troublesome trio I've ever worked with in my life. But first of all, one roaster at a time. Second of all, your rebuttal must happen during your turn. Constructive heckling is encouraged, especially by the audience, and not by Martin. Your roast is time boxed, so get all your comments out between 6 and 8 minutes. I know categorically that these three are not capable of doing anything between 6 and 8 minutes, okay? And then take this opportunity to take as many jabs as the opposing data sources as you would like, right? Now, I figured as a good start, a really good idea would be to start with Common Data Flexio and Service Verse. It's basically had its name changed more times than, well, nothing, because it's literally the winner. I mean, Dataverse is literally one of the most...
we say.
It is, yeah. It's one of the most greedy data storage facilities. Like Dataverse storage is so strange. You've got to upgrade your capacity every single time you download a document. I mean, you've got to archive data faster than you delete your browsing history. It's bonkers, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to start with Mats. And Mats, my friend, you have the floor. So off you go, and I'm going on mute except to laugh at you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Well, I think you gave a pretty good introduction. A bit tainted though, but as I said, it's a dynamic data source. And basically, I mean, the whole discussion basically was finished at your second slide. Have you seen the Power Platform overview slide? Have you seen the only data source mentioned there from these three? Yeah, that was Dataverse. Why? Because Dataverse, it's the core of the Power Platform. We all know Power Platform, that's the future. Microsoft goes there. I mean, sometimes SQL, SharePoint get mentioned, but kind of like as an afterthought. And what I like, or what kind of like how I thought kind of like to differentiate Dataverse versus all the other, because Dataverse, that's made for low code makers. It's not just pro code or, well, whatever you call a SharePoint developer. It's really for everybody. And maybe like a story. A few weeks back, a good friend of mine, he's a carpenter. So they in their office, they have Office, but that's about it they have with IT. And during one Saturday, we sat on a couch, I was drinking a beer, and I was showing him how can you build a Power App. And actually, 4 hours later, he had built an app. Well, I mean, try that with SQL. Probably after 10 minutes, you would say, okay, Mats, come on, let's stop this, just have a beer. If I tried it to SharePoint, I probably would have lost a friend. So, I mean, that's kind of like the beauty of Dataverse, right? It is really easy to get started, but then there is this huge range. You can extend it. You can make it pro dev. I mean, seriously, SQL has a lot of capabilities, but we can extend Dataverse to, well, I would say almost probably more capabilities there. Well, then SharePoint probably not so much.
Is that what it's called now, Dataverse?
Keep up.
Just wanted to check. Identity crisis platform.
Yeah, that's true. I gotta say, it's dynamic. But, well, think about dynamic. Actually, Microsoft is still developing it. There's a lot of effort putting in there. There's a lot of things coming up. Basically, well, it's all hosted in cloud. You get an update every week. Twice a year, we have these release waivers. But basically, every month we get new updates, and I get those automatically as a maker. I don't have to do complex upgrades. I think I've done one SharePoint migration in my life to a new version. That was completely hell. Or with SQL, I tried SQL getting it from dev to test to prod. You know, with Dataverse, the whole ALM part, that's ingrained. You have solutions. That's in the DNA of the Dataverse. You can move it around. It's actually made for that, but it's made in a simple way, not kind of like having on top a lot of different services just to get your app working.
So how many times did you say they have to repair this platform, Matt?
A few times.
Every 2
I will
weeks?
mention probably more to drive the point home here.
We will be clear that Dataverse is sitting on top of a real database called SQL.
Thank you.
Oh, you mean
all the hard
down in the
work.
basement somewhere
Yeah.
there might be a
Don't
SQL
claim all the
server?
glory, buddy. Don't claim all the glory. Eh?
We call it evolvement, right? You know, kind of like the next evolutionary step from just the SQL database. That's actually the Dataverse. That's where we are nowadays, right? Because it's not 1999 anymore. This is actually the future. So, for example, when like a lot of things, kind of like when you develop for Dataverse, you have actually like nice looking UI. I can do it in a browser. I can do it in a tablet, even if I'm on the road. If I'm developing SQL, I basically just yell at my database all the time because everything is a caps lock. What's up with that? So see, that's what I mean. Getting to Dataverse, really easy to go there. You can do a lot. I haven't even touched the pro dev extensibility. But then again, Chris, I want to give these two a bit of time to talk about their legacy systems, I would say. So with that,
Legacy system. I mean, this.
That was amazing.
You say there's pro dev. Are you sure, Matt?
No. It's
product.
paint by numbers for data sources. That's what
Paint
data
by
source
numbers.
is.
Yeah, that's probably a closer description. Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. Okay, so Matt, thank you so much. I mean, in summary, it does sound like Dataverse is probably the best data storage facility of all time for everything, right? And absolutely, I'm not biased at all. I'm just saying. So we're gonna take a look at another one now. Here's something interesting. I don't know if you guys know, but databases love movies. Did you guys know that? I mean, I saw great movies about databases today, and I can't wait for the sequel.
The database dad joke.
Have you guys seen any? I don't know if you guys have seen those horror movies. There's a horror movie called It, and why does Pennywise the clown make such horrible SQL data structures? He tries to cast all the data to float. You have to be a horror movie fan. But I've also heard because these databases love to watch horror movies so much, they also like to drink, like a lot. So I heard a SQL query walk into a bar the other day, walked up to 2 tables and tried to join them. They were like, nope. Also, I heard 3 databases walked into a NoSQL bar. A little while later, they walked out because they couldn't find a table. It was terrible news. Anyway, so with that terribly horrible introduction, I would like to hand over to my good friend Claire to talk about what she calls a real database. So Claire.
No problem. So SQL is one of many of the legacy databases, the real databases in the world. Just as equal, you could be using Oracle to talk, or we could be looking at the Cosmos DBs, or anything that's a proper data structure. Now, this is talking about relational data, proper relational data structures, real relationships where Dataverse can't actually go more than one hop down, where you actually break the data. Real databases come from normalization, where we actually try to group the data in a proper way to make it easy to report on, but also too easy to use, something that doesn't happen in Dataverse because people
over engineering.
Yeah, it's underneath, it's doing all the hard work for you. The other thing that a real database does is it gives us much more data validation. We can also look at doing lots of the aggregates, the calculations on the fly, something needed Dataverse or SharePoint could do if they spent the week at it. They have to go and use Azure functions. So we've got proper calculations we can do on the fly at great speed. We've got the best bulk imports because we have packages already built to allow us to pull lots of data in one go. Not an Excel import for either of you. We can create multiple tables at a time and back out again.
Don't mock integration, okay?
We're going to look at optimization. SQL wipes the floor with both of them because Dataverse thinks it has views. It just loses a couple of columns. In SQL, we have proper views we can optimize to actually pre-filter to allow the apps to work the best they can. Now, we're called a premium data source for a reason. You pay for the best. You get the cheapies for free. Yeah. The other thing that we've got within the database structures is that we can also be on-premise. SQL works well enough with Power Apps to work both on-prem and in the cloud. So our customers that don't want their data floating around in weird Microsoft data centers, we can still work on-premise. Let's just remind you which SharePoint and CRM used on-premise. SQL. We're still the back end that does all the good stuff. So we're the best open data platform that other systems outside of the Microsoft ecosystem can work with. We're also the best at being able to connect with the AI and the other data mechanisms. The others aren't data sources. They're data temporary store things. We wouldn't even look at a temporary data the way these two work. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Chris.
I feel like somebody got a beating there. Actually, I'm going to cry somewhere. Just give me a moment.
Oh my God.
That was rock solid.
That was proper subtle.
Yeah, I know. Claire's known for her subtlety. I mean, Matt's
Yeah.
was quite nice compared to that. Well, you know what time it is, folks. It's it's the other things time. SharePoint. So you know it's interesting, right? Like I actually I used to be a hater. Actually, I've got a love-hate relationship with SharePoint. I love to hate it, right? It's quite interesting because I've seen lots of solutions built on top of SharePoint, and yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything actually work properly at scale. I remember somebody said to me, they're like, "Hey man, how many system admins do you need and designers to deploy a badly built, badly designed SharePoint list for Power Platform consumption?" And I'm like, "Well, none. SharePoint lists are terrible. Don't do it." Basically, yeah. So anyway, the whole concept of SharePoint around the Power Platform, it's cheap, it's easy, it does stuff really quickly. Does it have a place? I don't know. Compared to proper data structures like SQL and pretend data structures like Dataverse, let's have a look, right? So, Marty Potty, over to you.
Guys, this is a very simple discussion. It's cool that you got the opportunity to talk about your Dataverse, Dataflex Pro, CDS, whatever the identity crisis is this week, and SQL, amazing. I mean, what more could you do with a text file or a notepad that was overdone on steroids? But basically, nobody cares, okay? SharePoint is loved, okay? And the reason for that is quite simple. The barrier to entry is ridiculously low. A business user like old Joanne in accounts who wants to run her little list to set up her party is not going to be running off to the IT admin to say, "Please build me a database. I need to get this information quick." She's going to do it herself without any hassle. She's going to just adopt, build a list, and before you know it, she'll be reporting on it. She'll know exactly what she's got going on for a little party, who's coming, who's gifting what. That's the thing that makes SharePoint so lovable, is that the way to learn on it is really quick, and it can be used really effectively. And yeah, sure, some people have done some weird things on it that should never have been done, but it's all about education, and it's a quick fix. Another thing that's really cool about SharePoint is the integration alone that is built in there would take you guys years to build. It is tightly knit into Office. Like, you would never be able to build that document automation stuff in your SQL environment. So yeah, that is essentially SharePoint in a nutshell. It is simple to use. Business users love it. They don't care about all this techie stuff. Back to you, Chris.
It's even uglier than Excel.
Right. I like the fact that it has integration, but I think everything has integration into Office nowadays. So, like, I'm still trying to find a use for SharePoint, but anyway,
It's integrated with an email. Yay!
Oh gosh.
I have a question right now, and thanks, Marty Potty. I think there was a very, very good overview of the little that SharePoint has to offer. So I'm going to get slammed for this. So I just want to check on a couple of things, right? So we've got these 3 data storage facilities of many. I mean, there are many out there in the world, and I kind of feel like when you look at them, there's a whole thing of price and value, that a discussion to be had. I'm going to ask each one of you a question sort of after this, but I know each one of you have worked in your significant solution area at some point, had the debates around the cost versus value. But Ben Franklin makes a really good point. He says, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. And let me give you a classic example. I got into this tattoo in South Africa, right? Many moons ago. I can't get rid of it. I'm going to have to get a skin graft to do something with the arm. But this is an example of a terrible tattoo, okay? I didn't want to pay the money. I got it done, and now I've got it stuck with me. It's kind of like a legacy solution built in SQL. You just can't get rid of it. So it is. It's stuck there. Like I don't have a choice. It's like that SQL on-prem with your GDPR data or whatever. I'm kind of screwed, right? But then I paid the money, and I got a great tattoo, and I'm pretty psyched with this one. But that's the thing, right? Quality costs money. Now, what I see a lot of the time, and it just be prepped, right? I see a lot of the time people building things based on use cases in the wrong place. So let me give you an example. Karen in accounts, Claire, we always make this joke about Karen in accounts. She's become our friend now. Karen in accounts builds a very basic app. She decides she's going to create it on Dataverse, ends up costing the company a ton of money because, the app is being used by 50 people, but it's actually a very basic thing that could have been whacked into a SharePoint list, right? Use case-based data storage is really important. Don't just hammer everything into the thing right? So I guess from a use case perspective, I'm going to start with Claire. I know you've seen it all, right? You've seen it absolutely all. You've gone through the process of actually looking at other data storage facilities. You've been a SharePoint person, a Dynamics person, and a SQL person. I know you have your favorites, Dataverse, obviously. So how often do you use cases to determine the type of data storage, and do you have a process? And you are allowed to roast these two. Please don't be afraid.
No, I do. It's always looking at, for me, it's data first. So what is the data we've got to read? Where's it got to go? And how many people are going to use it and how much volume? Because neither of these two systems outside of SQL can cope with the hundreds of thousands of rows a day like IoT, but neither should they, because apps shouldn't be talking to huge volumes of transactional data. So each one of us has got a place in the story, and many of our solutions use all three to answer the problem.
Matt, I know you've got the exact same approach, right? Well, not the exact same. You've got a similar approach. Obviously, Dataverse first before everything, and then that SQL thing.
Well,
But yeah,
if you look at Microsoft with their first-party apps, what are built on Dataverse, like if you look at Dynamics Sales and so on, well, they already have integrated SharePoint, for example. So even kind of like in the first-party, Microsoft says, well, okay, you have all the accounts, that kind of stuff. But for example, if you're going to store documents, don't do that in Dataverse. You have a whole document management system in SharePoint. And as we said, well, SharePoint, not really a relational database, but for document storage, well, there might be a place for that. So I think that's also kind of like where we see, obviously, we have to bring them together. Claire, good example, huge volumes of data. Well, that's not what Dataverse is for. Kind of like you will get stuck with API limits really quickly and all that kind of stuff. So you have to evolve. Then again, Chris, what you said about the use cases, right? Or Marty, what you had an example for SharePoint. Well, Dataverse can expand, and then at some point you just have to say, well, we reached the limit where we can't go any further. Wait, let's use a virtual entity. We have a SQL database in the backend there. Let's go with that.
That's a great response. And Marty, I know you've done loads of work with the Dynamics folks. You actually did something really cool. You were one of the first folks to actually integrate SharePoint properly to Dynamics. So do you also find it's use case based?
Absolutely. And it has to be optimized based on how you want to deliver your solution. So like SharePoint as a tool set is great for things like forms-based data, document storage, like Matt said. But when it starts evolving into this high transactional environment, SQL is definitely the best place to go because there's no ways that SharePoint can deal with those throttling limits, and in sort of the Dataverse area, that's great for application specific kind of data and also having data driven processes. That's perfect for that. Like staged gate type of things, very similar to the old Dynamics workflow engine that we used to work on.
I mean, and that's a great point, right? So the one thing I want to say to every single person in the chat that's listening to this, stick your hand up. Well, don't stick your hand up. Type something in the chat. If you run into licensing issues every day with regards to where you're going to put your stuff. Yep. All of us. I know we've had a couple of frank conversations on Twitter with a couple of the folks across the stack around Dataverse is junk because it's so expensive. It's expensive for a reason, right? You don't have to, you get a whole services layer with it. You don't need 25 devs to do anything. With SharePoint's part of the standard scheme because it is 50% of the Power Platform data in the world lives in SharePoint lists. It's a phenomenal way for citizen developers to get started. In SQL, yes, SQL's premium, but it doesn't suffer the same multiplexing rules as things like Dataverse, right? So there's a place for everything. SQL is phenomenal at storing massive amounts of data. That's why we integrate up to it and work with it, right? So the whole idea is being able to use the right solution, the right data storage facility at the right time. And that when we chat to organizations all the time, it's never just, you're a SQL organization. Cool. It's never. Claire, you do loads of center of excellence work. What's the mixture of premium versus standard, roughly, would you say? This hazard a guess.
in actual use cases that are built on things they want to do. So I would say the premium end is probably 20 to 30%. And they're the enterprise-wide, high volume, high capacity, everybody wanting to be on it at the same time type of applications.
Spot on. And Mats, I know you've done a few things around the Center of Excellence, but also with Dynamics. Would you say when you look at the people, because you mentioned pro code earlier, people that like to write developments, and by the way, Dataverse is a pro code platform, just throwing it out there. You can build plugins and use JavaScript. Yes, you can. And the whole concept is that, we do have a mixture of pro coders and low coders. Mats, what would you say? Do you see that? And what would you say the split is?
Well, I think there's actually development kind of like, I gotta admit, you can do a lot of pro code, but the Dataverse itself getting more and more functionality into low code. So actually, I see kind of like the pro code, it's getting less and less in Dataverse directly, and more if you do pro code, well, then do an Azure function kind of like, or do it in SQL kind of like next to it. I mean, you can, for a lot of use cases, it's still useful to do it directly in a Dataverse or Power Platform, Power Apps, but more and more cases go to external places, kind of like embedding, bring it all together. Referring back to your Power Platform slide, I think what it shows kind of like Dataverse, more like the foundation there. And on top, you have different functionality pieces, which can be like a Power App, but can also be Azure Function, Logix app, Power Automate on top. So there's still obviously a lot of pro code thing going on directly in Dataverse. I actually see like it's getting less and less because also people start thinking, as I said, of ALM, and actually they realize it's probably easier not to put everything in the Dataverse.
Spot on. And Marty, I've got a great one for you to wrap this slide up. What we're seeing a lot of is a lot of people using SharePoint lists, Microsoft lists, and then moving that stuff up to Dataverse for Teams. Is that something you're seeing is quite common? So do you see because I still don't necessarily know the complete difference between SharePoint lists and Microsoft lists, but is that something you're seeing a lot of?
Yeah, it's kind of like a natural progression. People start building stuff in SharePoint in the business world. And then they want to start evolving that into something more significant. Like they want to do something a little fancier. What business users discovered was they get into SharePoint, they start playing around with lists, and they're like, oh, this is cool. I can do something funky because I understand an Excel formula, and I can just translate that into some kind of SharePoint function or feature, or does something with some text. And then it has a limit, it only can go so far, and then it stops working reliably. And then people started building that out and actually integrating into Power Apps and using a couple of Logic apps plugged in. It's been great.
So I'm starting to kind of hear that like the three of you speak before, where there would be us like shouting at each other in a room saying my data storage facility is the best, right? It kind of sounds like you three want to work together a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of like we planned this, hey?
I don't know, hey? Yeah, why not? I'll work with Mats. I'll definitely work with Claire. That stuff's.
You don't have a choice. We make Claire. Fight you, man. So, Ryan Jones, he owns Dataverse at Microsoft, and I think the guy's amazing. I mean, to run that product through where it is now. He said something at one of the platform conferences, and he said, "Never be afraid to challenge, because it is you who will lead the transformation of an organization." And here's the thing, folks. Every single person in the comments, every single person watching this video on YouTube, you need to understand something very clearly. Recommending the wrong technology to an organization just because it's cheap, or picking a technology for an organization just because it's fancy, does not help them. Okay?
Or because it's more expensive and you want to sell the licenses. Also some dark patterns you see there. One of my favorite examples when we sell Dynamics, and we sell it, let's say, to the board members. And the board members, they want to have an app kind of like to manage all the food they get for the board meetings. And we say, well, we can definitely build that in Dynamics, but is that really the best course of action? Kind of like to sell them Dynamics licenses to manage what kind of pieces they get for the meeting? See, that's kind of like what I want to say now, or what I agree with you. Kind of like also think about what's best for the customer, not what's maybe best for your partner status there.
Spot on, my friend. And this goes to Microsoft sellers as well.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Your eyes are too big for your belly. People go all the way up to SQL when they just don't need to for a majority of things they're going to build. It's got to be that extreme end of the volume or we're hitting API calls to come into the SQL land. 80% of what most people build will start off in SharePoint and only grow from there. So it really is, what is it you actually need at this point in time, and where are you going to grow to in the next couple of years? Will that really mean that you need the data you're actually going to create from your application to be in here, here, or here? You might read from SQL, you might read from SharePoint, but we might save it to Dataverse.
Spot on. And it's really key. It's really key to remember that each one of these data storage facilities has got its use. It's got its service. So one of the things I know every single person on this call has discovered after 10 years of fighting with one another and picking bones, because I'll tell you why we fight. We see stuff not working because it's been implemented badly. Brutally honest, that's what happens, right? So what we figured out is that we have to work together to understand each other's tech. So the secret sauce of the Power Platform, I'm going to get sloppy here. I'm going to do a cuddle on my own. The secret sauce is to work together. Oh. Come on.
Very nice.
It's like, I'll be hugging you guys if this was a real roast battle. I'll be like, oh, man, this is so great. You do such great dynamic stuff. Claire, your editing skills are so amazing. Martin. Okay, Martin, you're amazing.
We love documents. We love them.
We love documents so much. You don't know what they're there for. No, but for real. So I think, and I hope you all agree, because I think it's important. And folks in the chat, please understand that and ask questions now, because now's a great time to ask, because we have 3 amazing experts on the call who understand this platform, who know how it works, who have been through the ringer on all of this stuff, right? And I've actually seen a lot of the results of the stuff that they've built, and it's an absolutely incredible thing to watch. But please understand that the only way that this will work from a platform perspective, I'm not talking about an app, is that you have to be able to look across the Microsoft stack. We have one Microsoft cloud. We don't have 16 clouds, right? There's one. We have to be able to work together and to provide amazing services to the customers that we have, to provide amazing services to the people we're working with, using the full Power Platform stack is really important. It's not just SharePoint, it's not just SQL, and it's not just Dataverse, right? So I'm going to ask you guys one last question before we wrap up and we take some questions from the chat, because I'm excited to see what people are asking. And also, before I ask you guys, I want to issue a challenge, right? I would love to see the worst possible data or IT joke in the chat. Okay, language. Okay, just be careful, behave yourselves. Right? I would love to see the worst. We'll vote it up right at the end. Okay. So
what's the benchmark?
It's
what's
easy.
The benchmark? Is
the worst
cheesy
data
or what?
Is Excel.
Yes, we all agree on that. So I want to ask last things, right? I would love one last snappy, rude one-liner, right, from each one of you. But now you have to insult your own data source, not the others. Okay. So I'm not going to start because I love them all. See, I'm a cuddly guy. But actually, I'm going to take Marty, right? So Marty, what is the worst possible thing you could say about SharePoint?
The worst possible thing I could say about SharePoint, GCMs. It's so like all over the place. I mean, the fact that none of the things talk to each other, everyone wants to go and build, imagine building 20 lookup fields and just breaking your list. It stops functioning. I mean, what a silly solution.
Okay. Cool. Matt.
I think for Dataverse, you mentioned all the other names. Basically, that was definitely also one of the points. But I think licensing and changing licensing, that's get really complicated, especially explaining that to customers, keeping up with it, and planning long term. So I'm going for that. It's still moving forward fast, but there are some disadvantages definitely to that.
There's like 1 or 2 disadvantages, let's face it. There's like one.
Let's call one, yeah.
So SQL, probably the worst thing, certainly from a Power Platform point of view, is being able to integrate it with things properly. We've got really, really cool systems, but being able to integrate it through one fairly cruddy connector is not the best way to make use of really good databases. And it's also the fact that it's a skill that a lot of low code and even pro code people don't have. Database admins are a special breed.
Yeah. They
Oh
are.
yeah, I used to
But
be an
we can do a
XP.
real query. Let's just face that. Let's come back to that. We can do a query.
That's important. That's important. Querying is
Make a
important.
slow clap here.
Yeah.
I won't even try and sell SharePoint search over SQL queries. I'll just behave myself.
Okay, so we got to wrap up. We can roast each other in the comments now. So if you guys are keen, let's insult each other one last little time. But just the three of you, thank you. Wow, thank you, amazing. Thank you so very much for doing this with me. It was awesome. I'm looking forward to doing it again and insulting each other one more time, but also talking about why it's important to work together in the Power Platform. And this is what makes these successful. So a massive thanks. And DynamicsCon folks on the call, yeah, we want to see you in the comments. Be as cheeky as you want. Yeah, and feel free to compliment me on my awesome hat. Thanks again, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Here we go. What's up?
Hey.
Hey, everybody.
I've forgotten how much fun we have doing that.
Well done. That was awesome.
Yeah, well done to you guys.
Okay, can we officially announce a roast winner? Like, is there a winner?
Claire killed all of us.
Can we just get some votes?
Little discussion there, yeah.
Yeah, let's get some votes in the chat. Who actually won that round? Right.
Yeah, actually, I think Claire, during your session, there was the most common saying, "Oh well, this is pretty tough stuff."
I blame Chris. He said be mean, so I was mean.
I don't mean that mean. Poor Marty. I mean, look at him. He's like so sad.
Oh.
Well, listen, well done, everyone. Yeah, I kind of feel like Claire won that. There was an absolute beating. Absolute beating.
Yeah, you were very good.
It was actually very upsetting for me to watch. I mean, Marty's one of my friends, and so is Matt's. And, it's just...
You actually felt emotional on our behalf. Is that what it is?
So listen, thank you again to the DynamicsCon team. As always, they're awesome. And to everyone in my chats, thank you so very much for supporting this event. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. It's become one of my favorite over the years. So yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to be here. So yeah, we've got we've just had a horrendous joke from Carrick in the chat saying that would be great, that we should have a new roast sequel coming up soon. Anyway, so yeah, I hope everyone that. The sequel to this roast battle will be coming up at some point. But yeah, we got some questions in the chat. I guess we should probably start with the multiplexing question. Does anyone want to take it?
Didn't you in the chat said you wanted to do that?
Yeah, I'll do it. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. So yeah, multiplexing is a good one. It's down. Multiplexing only ever comes up really with Dataverse. It comes up with other areas like SQL and Salesforce, but multiplexing is kind of refined to the connector you're using, right? So Salesforce Connect will have different multiplexing rules to Dataverse, will have different multiplexing rules to SQL. Basically, what multiplexing means is you're polling connections, right? So you're taking multiple connections, munging them into one connection, and then kind of splitting them out into many. And it's a good excuse to not buy licenses. Because what we still see people doing is they'll take a Power App, a Canvas app, build it in front of a SharePoint list, fire data up to Dataverse using Flow, and then when something changes, bring data back down from Dataverse to Flow into SharePoint. That is multiplexing, 100%, because you are not, if you're using Dataverse data in any way, shape, or form, you are multiplexing if you do not actually do a direct link up. That being said, you are allowed to push data in, okay? So if I'm cheeky, the way that it works is like a bank account, right? So putting data in is fine, taking data out, you got to pay, okay? And it's that simple. These rules are different for SQL. These rules are also different for other data storage facilities. So what I'm saying to you is read the documents, guide before guidance, yeah? Do you guys want to add anything?
Well, maybe for Dataverse, because there was also one question about the app passes. So actually, I think that's kind of like if you think about a multiplexing scenario now with the new pricing coming in effect in October for the app passes, I think that's also kind of like a good way to make sure that you're on the good side, even though you're not sure about multiplexing. If you get the app passes there, it's gotten a lot cheaper to do that now.
But yeah, Dataverse does come up a lot. It is what it is. It's a complicated data structure, and it's got a lot of rules and things like security and all that. You pay for it, right? And that's really key. Right. Let's see what else. I'm just looking before I start picking on people. Okay, cool. Oh, this is really cool. This is really cool. There we go.
There was the question with the app passes, why it would still kind of like and notify you that you have to prolong your trial, even though you have bought the app passes. So what I've noticed sometimes, make sure that the app passes are actually assigned to the correct environment and the app. I think at the moment it's not really viewable in Admin Center. So if you're in doubt, make a support ticket, but definitely check that out, that you have the correct number of app passes assigned to the correct environments.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Other than that, it's just comments like high fives and stuff. That's really awesome. Thank you, everyone. That's super supportive of you.
Mostly about SharePoint.
It's basically databases for simpletons. So next. Okay.
I was going to say that if you want to use the SQL, but you're struggling with trying to make it surface for your apps nicely, don't forget you've got virtual tables using the new SQL connector, which means that Dataverse can use it as well and use it on volume and speed. So that's another thing to add in how we all play together.
We also, Claire, as you said, basically SQL has this. There is a connector in a default Power Automate, but it's not that good. So take a look at virtual entities again, because they're adding a lot of features there. So it's not just reading data anymore. You can actually do more now, even more CRUD operations. So I think Microsoft is really pushing these virtual entities a lot for, I think, exactly the reasons we laid out in a session, right? Because this integration story is getting more and more important. And these virtual entities from a Dataverse perspective, they are playing a really important part in that.
Definitely, and the SQL connector as part of those virtual tables is now out in public preview, and we're already using it elsewhere, and it's really cool.
It is. It's actually awesome. We've seen that come up a lot. So I guess just based on the session and where we are now and what's happening now with the way that Microsoft's trajectory is going, my question to each one of you, right, is: do you think right now the way Microsoft is going with things like looking at the per app passes, looking at other licensing options in the future? Cannot say what they are, but I'm not an MVP actually, so probably good. No.
Nice cop out there.
Pleasure. You'll thank me later. When you think about what's going on in the platform itself, connectors, when you're looking at sort of the inclusive and exclusive approach, like what do you think? Do you think that Microsoft is on the right trajectory? And Claire, I guess we'll start with you. Do you think it's going the right direction?
I think if we're thinking licensing, it's way too complicated. It's so difficult to explain and to help people. From an integration, the technology, we're going leaps and bounds. But explaining the licensing and finding the right licensing for each solution, it's too complicated for most users.
Matt?
I agree on the technical side. And also my feeling is that Microsoft knows about the licensing problem and the complexity about it. And things like the October license changes, so they're trying to do stuff. But I also remember Ryan just saying, well, setting up a license system is incredibly complex in itself. But I feel like they really know that there is work to be done, and they're working on that. So I'm confident that we will go in a good direction there, and it will become even better in the future.
Marty?
Yeah, no, I think it's headed in the right direction. I mean, the simpler, the better, dude. Like you've always said, guide before guidance, the more they simplify it and the more they bundle into as much as possible, the better,
Agreed. Okay. And last thing, so we literally have 1 minute, right? But anything you want to add, any references or resources you want to put out there, now's the right time. Anyone?
Each other.
Yeah. So to wrap that up, just a massive thanks to everyone. Please get hold of Claire, Marty Party, and Matt's on Twitter, LinkedIn, Carrier Pigeon, Facebook, whatever you want. Yeah, it's definitely great to chat to you three, and thank you very much for being part of this crazy experiment. Hopefully we get to do it soon. So the sequel roast battle will come very soon. And to the DynamicsCon team, once again, you are awesome. We love the way you organize this and you run this, and we love being a part of this whole thing. So thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to all of you in the comments. You rock. Yeah.
Definitely.
Ciao, everyone.
Have a good night.